Very easy to use and giving you great results for little to no money. I am of course talking about blue stuff. But what exactly is blue stuff? This is blue stuff. And this translucent thermoplastic will help you create molds out of all sorts of bits and pieces from your miniatures. And with that we can turn these into all of these, for instance. So all sorts of small molds that I have made. And I personally like using these to put on the basis of my miniatures to bring some extra life and character to them. Now I have here, for instance, an example. The items that you see on this base are all made with this blue stuff or this instamold, whichever term you prefer. And I have here, for instance, the quiver with me as well. You will see that they are identical, and that is because they're both made with the same mold using this product right here. Before that we can get started, let's cover the items and tools that we'll be needing first. Obviously, the most important thing is the instamold itself. Some bits and pieces which we will be making our molds of are also required. Next is green stuff, needed to fill the molds with for the final product. A small kettle or pan with water which we'll be warming up, and a bowl or something similar with cold water, which will fasten the process. Finally, we will also be using a hobby knife to clean our molds with. So now that we are prepared, let's get molding. The first thing you want to do is start warming up the water. Do not let it go to boiling temperatures though, as that would be dangerous to work with. Now simply put the pieces of instamold in the pan and you will see them react to the heat. When everything is sticking together and turning into a blob, you'll be ready to work with it. Do be careful though, as the blue stuff will be hot when you take it out. Next we take our cold water and hobby knife, as we are now about to make the actual molds. Of course, you'll also be needing your bits and pieces for this as well. I used a small arrangement of shields, weapons, corpses and so on to work with to give you some different examples. Pull off a small amount of blue stuff you think will cover the item you want to mold and put the rest back in the water to keep it flexible and warm. Now simply press the blue stuff on the item so that the mold can take shape. The flatter the piece, the easier it is to work with, as with the shield for instance. You will see why in a moment. Once done, put the mold in the cold water. Due to the cold, the blue stuff will stiffen up, thus creating your final mold to work with. If you're working with a bigger piece, things might be a little trickier due to the different nooks and crannies. Again, apply enough pressure to the instamold to cover all these parts until you think you're done. You might however see certain parts of your figure be completely covered by the instamold at the end, depending on how pressure pushed it around, as for instance with the case of my sword or my soldier here. Make sure that you clean this up first. Not only may it damage your figure pulling it out of the mold, but you also risk green stuff not being able to reach these spots correctly later on. Simply use your hobby knife to carefully cut away the excessive blue stuff before moving on. Now that our molds are ready, it is time to take out the green stuff to fill them with. Simply cut off a piece you think is enough and start mixing the blue and yellow until it becomes a green blob. Do keep in mind that green stuff is a very sticky product, so keep your tools and fingers wet to prevent it from sticking everywhere. Once your green stuff is ready, simply put it in the molds that you have created. Again, depending on the size, you might want to apply pressure from different angles to make sure your green stuff got in all those nooks and crannies from earlier. A good example is the skeleton here for instance. You can see that an air bubble has formed in one of his eye sockets. If this is the case, or you see that a certain spot is not filled completely, just apply more pressure on that specific spot. I personally like to push the green stuff down on a flat surface, by the way. This way, the green stuff will have nowhere to go but up in the mold. Another option in doing this is rolling the back of your hobby knife over the back to flatten it down. Again, do make sure that your work table or your knife are wet enough, because this product will stick to them very easily. If however you do prefer not risk pulling out your newly created piece and want to push it in yourself, that is also fine of course. Finally, I do suggest you cut off any excessive green stuff from the back though. This will not only flatten the back even more, but also give you additional green stuff to work with. Just follow the shape of your mold with your hobby knife carefully and you will very easily get rid of it. Once you're done and have all of your molds filled, let it dry for about a day to make sure that it's solid enough to continue. Approximately 24 hours have now passed and it is time to have a look at the results. I have here for instance this fellow, which is a berserker. I picked this one because it is a model that is actually a legit model. It's not like corpse or anything. And sometimes that will cause issues because of the different amounts of layers. So this one right here, yeah, okay, a great example of what I mean, that sometimes it can fail, is for instance this leg. So there are some bubbles on here on the actual brace. Overall, decent mold. Not perfect, but it is decent enough. So those were the tricky parts. Now just have a look at the simple ones, such as shields and smaller items. A closer, a lot smaller, a lot thinner. For instance, this arm with sword. Again, we just pop it out, easy as that. And yeah, this one looks very nice, except small little issue here. The sword is not fully casted, but other than that, you can see the amount of detail. For instance, oh, the fingers are perfectly molded as well, as is the rest of the arm. The hilt of the sword, so this one is a very nice example. Another one here, let's take a shield. Those are always the easiest because of a flat surface. Again, very lovely. You can see a little snap here in the actual mold, but that might be because of the actual shield that I used. I'm not quite sure. The mold will pick that up, so do keep that in mind. But another example right here, if we can focus, there we go. Another shield, and again, very clean, very lovely. This one looks very lovely indeed. And then again, a couple of corpses, this time however with a flat back. So this one should work out a lot better than the warrior that we saw earlier. If I can pop them out, that is. Oh, and it seems that some of the green stuff has not fully connected. Or actually, I don't know if that's still part of the sculpt or not though. Well, that might just be something... Oh no, it's just some rubble, so it's just some stones. That's perfectly fine. But yeah, here again... Very nice. Again, however, a small mold line on one of the shoulders of the corpses, of the skeletons. So something that you can easily scrape away, which is also what brings me to the next step. And that is sort of cleaning the mold even further. Because for instance, we have this one right here. We see all this excessive amount of green stuff, which of course is normal because that was part of the mold as well. But if we just want to have the actual skeletons, we have to get rid of that. Again, for that we use our hobby knife. And what we're gonna do is just follow the mold and just use the hobby knife to kind of cut it out. Simple as that. Just cut it out, carve it out. Make sure not to damage the actual mold here. So there we go. We slowly get rid of all the excessive amount of green stuff that we do not need. And that way, you know, if it's thin enough, it's very easy to do actually. Sometimes you can even pluck it off with just using your fingers. So, for example, let us take a shield here as well. This one has some flesh as well. Again, use the hobby knife, set it next to the shield, put some pressure on it. Flesh is removed, and this one is missing a corner, but that's beside the point. And then here as well, last example. Just put it against the edge, push it down, and the flesh is gone. There you go. That will conclude this video. I hope that you enjoyed it, that it was useful. If it was, please let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget to hit that like button and the subscribe button, of course. And then we will see each other in a next video. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.